activities that engage, educate, and support an individual to successfully make life changes necessary to recover them from disability substance use disorder. The activities that compromise these services are educated and coaching. A key element contributing to the value of these services is that recovery coaches appropriately highlight their personal experience or lived experience in recovery. So my top 4 domains are going to be advocacy, education, recovery wellness, and community support. And a lot of the times community support can involve things like getting resources to the area. I'm very heavily involved with the 12-step community, as well as getting connected to nonprofits or places that might be able to provide things like housing. Or I did a luncheon with Faces of Hope earlier this week, and that was a really cool thing to kind of learn and get a part of. That they do a lot of domestic violence, assault, sexual assault, and they have a lot of resources that can help women in those situations. And networking and getting connected is one of my strong suits there. The role of or task of a peer support specialist. A peer support specialist provides non-clinical recovery support to individuals as peers struggling with mental health illness. If I communicate that I am working with a peer, that is what is also known as the client or the parolee or the probationee, whatever it may be, they are referred to me as peers. A peer support specialist shares an intimate knowledge and fundamental understanding of the difficult challenges these individuals face through their own lived experience and recovery. By demonstrating an ability in actively listening to my clients, expressing empathy appropriately, and sharing my own experience when relevant, role modeling success and growth in recovery. If I ever have a situation, like a lot of my peers that I work with right now may have children. I do not have children, and I make sure to reiterate that to them when I first start working with them. And I'll say something like, you know, I don't have kids and you do have kids. And so that's something I'm never going to understand. I'm never going to understand what it's like to have the guilt that comes with being a parent that struggles with substance use. And I'm never going to understand the court problems you have to go through and trying to get custody back. But what I can do is I can hold your hand and I can find you a way to get out of it. I can connect you with people that can help you be successful, and just try to make them feel empowered in their own decisions. Peer support specialists can foster a connection and relationship with clients that is unique with a traditional clinical setting. Peer support specialists are able to capitalize on this special relationship to encourage, motivate, and support individuals to set goals and take steps towards achieving progress and positive change in their own recovery and in their own lives. So we have a wellness plan, which was founded by Optum, and it has 8 different areas of goals that peers will complete on their own. When I do my initial meeting with them, I go over, what do you think recovery coaching is? What are your expectations? And then they'll tell me, and I say, that's great. Like, this is my expectation for you. I expect you to use communication. I expect you to show up on time. I expect you to be honest, and so on and so forth. And then we'll go forward with creating your goals. I do get a lot of the time we'll be creating a wellness plan for the peer, and they'll start giving me goals, and their goals will be like, I want to get a sponsor, I want to phase up, and I want to be off probation, and I want to, like, they'll start giving me answers that I call like treatmented answers. And they're answers that if someone has been through a lot of treatment in their life, they know that these are what we want to hear. And so they tend to say what they think we want to hear. And so I like to take a lot of time for my peer to kind of take a step back and, like, if this is really what you want, like, if you really want to get a sponsor, if that's your goal, if you want to get off paper, if that's your goal, that's great. But, like, what's going to make you successful? Like, in the end, it's all about making you successful. There's no right or wrong answer, but I try to encourage people to figure out what they truly want instead of just giving me like the automated robotic answer. My peer support parts are a personal guide and role model for individuals seeking to initiate, achieve, and sustain long-term recovery from addiction or mental health. This one is really important to me because I feel like not only am I blessed with the opportunity to help other people learn how to live life in recovery, but I also get to hold myself to a higher standard and try to be the person I would want my peers to be. So this involves, like, me outside of my, like, recovery life. I want to be a good person. I want to be a good person in the community. I want to be nice to people at the grocery store. There's a lot of smaller aspects that I feel like go involved with being a role model outside of just being sober. Advocacy for clients to feel supported through their treatment and to have equal understanding of what is expected from them in a manner that will allow the client to progress in their treatment and be supported and represent what they are when they are not present. This one is really cool, especially for being in Ada County treatment courts, because I had the opportunity, if say a peer has absconded and they've been picked up on a warrant and they're in custody. However, when that peer was absconding, they were communicating with me. It's not uncommon for someone to be absconding and still be communicating with me. Usually I'm trying to get them to go utilize tools that we have in the community, like idle harm reduction, or trying to get them to check into shelters or stay safe in any type of way. And so when they come back into custody, they go to court, and I'm able to attend our court staffings and say, you know, like, so-and-so may have absconded, but they also were staying in communication. And so dealt with this before they absconded. There was a lot of things going on, yada, 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 and try to advocate for them and allow them to be heard. I try to speak about my peers as if they're always in the room. So I'm never going to go to staffing and be like, yeah, well, so-and-so was just lazy. Like, I'll be like, you know, there's always a reason for why people deal with things that they deal with, whether it's traumas or it's they have a lot going on, or if it is anxiety or depression, and just trying to meet that peer where they're at and then communicating that to other people. It's very easy, I know in my own experience, to go through and have people abscond, like in the summertime, a lot of people will go on the run. And it's easy for me to be like, oh, they just like want to go out and party. But the reality of it is like a lot of, since we use more in the summer, a lot more traumas happen in the summer. And that's something that I tend to kind of skip out on. I get to be a liaison as well to formal and informal community supports, resources, and recovery supporting activities. I really enjoy utilizing the Phoenix Multi-Sport. It's a 24-hour, the only requirement is to have 24 hours of sobriety, and they do a lot of outside activities. They went skiing like almost every week this last winter, and they paid for people to go skiing if they couldn't afford it. And it's a great way to get involved with people, especially if someone is not so keen on staying involved with the 12 steps, or for people to peer wellness if they need somewhere to go or if they need a cell phone. And that's a part of that networking I talked about in the beginning. These are some of the core values of peer support services. So it highlights our personal and lived experience in recovery as a key component to their service role. I'm really big on not trying to say I've done things that I haven't. And a lot of times when I meet with someone, we're like going over a history, they're like, oh, I did fentanyl. And I've never done fentanyl. I got sober. I'm coming up on like 9 years. And so I have never experienced what that's like to go through those types of specific addictions. I've never smoked like the new weed that's around. And so trying not to glorify my story or change it in any way to try to fit that person better. That's going to be a lot more harmful because I'm coming up on that person. I'm trying to form a relationship on. And they're very smart. It's very easy to know when someone is trying to say that they've done something that they haven't. So just being honest about my own truth and holding to that. The element missing from other services settings is central, and why peer services are so successful and effective and popular. A service context that minimizes the power differential between coach and peer helps to create situations in which peer experiences trust. Peers are encouraged to make informed choices and guided decisions about the initiation and self-management of their own recovery. This one is really cool. We have a PO here. Her name is Tess, and she is amazing. And I was talking with her one time about someone that she was working with, and she started, when she confronts people on probation about things, she'll give them a minute. She'll ask them a question. If she knows they're lying, she'll kind of just take a minute and take a step back, and she'll be like, do you want a minute to rethink your answer and decide if you're lying? And I think that that is huge, especially with law enforcement. I mentioned earlier, I've been sober for almost 9 years. If I get pulled over, even if it's like my tags are expired, my whole body will tremble. And that's just a natural trauma response. It's out of my control. And so sometimes peer services can be really beneficial because you don't have that like intimidation of working with law enforcement. You don't have that intimidation of working with someone in a uniform or with a badge. Like those small little differences can make a huge change. This is my coworker's office, and in my office, when I had it, there was no credentials on the wall. What I had on the wall was like artwork that my peers and I had made together, and it's trying to eliminate that barrier, even those unseen ones. The value of peer services is the relationship between the peer recovery and the person receiving services involves ongoing communication and entails check-ins on progress, identification of challenges, and strategies to address them. It's really convenient for me and for my peers. Nobody does phone calls anymore, I'm told. I guess I'm like the only one that really calls them unless it's like someone from drug court. Um, and so I can text a lot of my clients and that makes it a lot easier. Sometimes you're at work. Sometimes I'm at work and I'm busy and you don't have time to pick up the phone and that's fine. Like we can text. I can meet a lot of my peers in the community. So a lot of my goals or a lot of my peers' goals will involve going to new meetings or trying meetings that they haven't been able to go to. And it's really uncomfortable to go into a setting with a bunch of people you don't know and kind of like make yourself vulnerable and be like, I'm here, I don't really know what I need or what I want. And having someone there that can help out with that is amazing. I go to a lot of meetings with my peers and I always make sure to communicate. I have different ethics in that aspect, but I do still have the HIPAA privacy. So if I see someone in the community, I don't approach them. They're more than welcome to approach me. If someone approaches us, I just say that you're my friend. And it's never been a big problem, but being able to go into the community with them is huge. I've gone to child custody cases with peers before. I've gone to doctor's appointments where they have to do blood draws and just kind of keep them calm and give them presence and help them in any way. I've done midnight suicide attempts, checked in at hospitals before. And sometimes there's a quote that I should have put on here, but it says, it's something along the lines of like, sometimes you don't need someone to tell you how to do something or to give you advice. You just need someone to hold your hand and tell you it's going to be okay. And that is what peer services is. It's that role that I feel like bridges the gap between the peer and the clinical team or the peer and any other type of like higher up that could be in that treatment services. Recovery coaches should not be confused with case management. The coach has a broader and more comprehensive role and task than the case manager. Case management is very crucial in recovery. I will say that if you're going through a treatment field, case management is a very high priority. The difference is that case management is more of like, this is what we have, this is what we're going to do. And peer services is very much peer-led. My peer decides what we're going to do next. My peer decides what our goal is going to be. Case management is a lot more like, this is the path that we're going to take. This is what we're going to do. And it kind of opens up. That's what it means when it says it's a little bit broader. Our roles are a lot more vast. Value of peer support services continued. Without sacrifice, quality peer recovery coaching can be offered in a time-sensitive and cost-effective manner. I tell my peers I'm available all times if they need anything. Sometimes we have a holiday and we're not in the office, and a lot of people don't have access to their email or phone calls. And I've had people call me at 1 o'clock in the morning at Sober Living, and they're like, my roommate just overdosed. I'm really freaking out right now. And sometimes it just needs like a 20-minute phone call to like, check yourself. Are you breathing correctly? Let's take a minute. Let's go outside. Let's smoke a cigarette. Let's do whatever you can do to outside of your trauma that you're in right now. Like, this is unfortunate. And it's a really amazing opportunity in those situations, as unfortunate as they are, to take a step back and be like, like that was probably you like a year ago, look where you are now. Like, it's a blessing that you get to pull through this. It's a blessing that you get to be there for that person when they're coming out of it and help them. You can be a role model as well. Further, because of the nature of the services, relationships, and setting, the peer recovery coach is able to engage in individuals at critical and often fleeting moments of opportunity, providing continuity of contact and supportive recovery relationship. I have had someone, this was like a year ago, and it was a really hard person. I was really struggling to work with them, and they had never called me. And then this person decided that they were going to go to CTC, which is also work release. I'm sure most of you guys know that. And they cut off their ankle monitor, and they were not supposed to be let out. They were not supposed to cut off their ankle monitor. And they called me for like the first time, and I went and met them on the side of the road and waited for deputies to come. And like, that's an opportunity that was if I hadn't picked up that phone, that person probably would have just absconded. And just meeting up with them even on the side of the street and being like, we can sit here together and we can figure our way out. And then moving forward, let's get you into good hands. It helps too, especially with that contact again with like that law enforcement. It can be really a lot. I've been in situations where I've been arrested and I immediately become defendant, or I become like irritable or angry, and it's not anything to do with that officer or what they're doing. It's like my own fear and trauma responses. And so it's easy to have someone when they're like getting off their feathers ruffled, what I like to call. I'm like, how about you smoke a cigarette and sit on the side of the street, and then we'll communicate with the officers in like a respectful manner. And it's nice to be that middle person between them. The case manager's work only falls into the instrumental domain, but unlike the peer recovery coach who fulfills all four domains. My goal is to work with them in any aspect of their life. So I'm not focused on the first, second, third domain. I'm focused on what it's going to be like for them outside of treatment. My goal is to make sure that they are going to be successful outside of treatment. Whether that is them staying sober the entire time. I have some people who maybe want to recreationally smoke weed, and that's not a very popular opinion. However, I have friends that were in substance use with hard drugs like heroin or meth, and then they are able to casually smoke weed. That is not my experience. But I don't want to take away that opportunity for someone. And if I'm in that situation, I have the opportunity to connect with that person and say, okay, maybe that's an opportunity for you. Were you able to smoke weed in the past? Did it always come with a good consequence? Was there negative consequences? What was it like for you? How was it unmanageable? And allow them to see their own. You can't tell someone that they need to get sober. You need to help them learn on their own of what they need. And a lot of the times, that's not being like the butting heads of like, you can't do that. Just allow them to explore their opportunities. And out of the people I've had do that, I've had many people come into programs and want to smoke weed, and by the time they're done, they don't want to smoke weed anymore. And that's because they learned it on their own, and they came into the understanding of their own concept of what they want to have in recovery and how weed may not work for them. I believe that is the last slide. I think my last slide is just questions. It is, yes. Do you guys have any questions or comments that you would like to ask?
So looks like there's a question on the chat. What training is required to become a peer support?
Yeah, so the training for peer support has kind of changed over the last year. Last year, Recovery Idaho is who mainly funded the peer support recovery coaching trainings. And they kind of went away, and now it's online. It's Recovery Coach Academy, and they are really good at getting back to you. My training was a week-long training from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then it was a week and a half long training, and then I took a test at the end. So it's very easy to do. I do have to upkeep on my supervision, get my CEUs, and take a test every 2 years to keep up on my own education. I feel like when I first got my certification, I was like, well, this is all it took. It was just like a week of training. But my supervisor kindly reminded me that it may be a week of training, but my job is a lifetime of experience. And so I'm qualified for all the things I've gone through in my entire life, and my substance use and my child history. I've come a really long way, and that is what makes my role important.
Is there funding for you to take folks out to try new sober activities or support them in other ways?
There is not. I don't know if you're asking for any specific activities, but almost any activity that the peer wants to do, we can find a way to do it in a free manner. I mentioned Phoenix Multisport, and they're fantastic. They cover everything. They did this like huge shoe drive last year, where if you did a CrossFit class, you got a free pair of shoes, and they were noble shoes, and those shoes are super expensive, and they gave everyone that completed the class a free pair of shoes. And the class is free to sign up. If they want to go hiking, we'll go hiking. If they want to go do some type of sport, I have a gym membership, and I'll just bring one of them. I can bring one person at a time. So if you want to go play basketball, let's go to the YMCA and play basketball. If you want to go swimming, let's go swimming, and we're blessed in Idaho to have that opportunity where there are a lot of activities that we can do outside that are free, but there is not any funding specifically.
So can peer support be done virtually for people in rural communities?
Yeah, absolutely. Even in Boise, I work with a lot of people that maybe aren't in a rural community, but sometimes telehealth is a lot easier. If it's easier for the client, that's what I want to do. If they are in a rural community, I try to find someone that's in that community. I have yet to have a area in Idaho or anywhere else, really Idaho, I haven't had any other resources anywhere else. I've yet to have an area where someone wanted to be sober and I don't know someone connected in that area. I had someone in Atlanta, Idaho, which I didn't even know was a place that wanted to get sober and get some connections. And I happened to have a phone number of a friend through a friend that knew someone in Atlanta, Idaho, and I got them connected. And that's like the big part of being networked into the recovery communities. I have a lot of resources, I have a lot of connections, and I like to maintain those relationships. So if something happens later on and they need to get a hold of them, they have that opportunity.
So what is your best elevator pitch to convince someone to check out peer support?
I'm really enjoying this question. 10 out of 10, Amanda. I don't know. Sometimes it can be really hard, and especially when we first started doing peer services, and even when I did it before I worked here, I would there would be someone that was struggling and they'd be going to meet their counselor, and I would get wind that they were going to meet their counselor. So I would go scope them out in the waiting room, and then I would just sit down and be like, hey, how are you? How long have you been in treatment? What did you do to get here? And then just making that small talk, especially with people new in recovery, it can be really uncomfortable and it can be really awkward. And I see that all the time. And, I have a lot of people that come in, they're like, oh, I did meth for 5 years. And I'm like, oh, when'd you start? And they're like, oh, 16. I'm like, oh, me too. I'm like, dude, it was crazy. And then it's yeah. And I've had people that are super young. And one of my favorite things to say to people when they're young is, I got sober young, and people always are like, oh, you're so lucky you got it at a young age. And being a young person, it's kind of like a backhanded compliment. It is great that we got sober at a young age, but then it's also I almost felt like I had to be well, my life was just as messed up, or I'm not any less of a, my life wasn't any better, or my addiction wasn't any better because I got sober younger. And that's always a good conversation starter, but it's really just trying to treat that person as a person and not trying to treat them as a client, or just treating them as a person and meeting them where they're at is really what works out the best. And some people don't want peer services, and that's fine. It's not for everyone. But the people that do want it, I've seen make tremendous growth. I've had 3 people I can think of on the top of my head that were on, it was a miracle. It was an absolute miracle that they did not get discharged. They absolutely deserved it. And now they're thriving. I had one that just graduated. The other 2 are in phase 4, which is our outpatient phase. And that was my experience as well. When I was in drug court, I broke a lot of rules, as I said in the beginning, and I came back my 3rd time absconding. I picked up new charges, and I was absolutely certain that I was going to be going to prison. And I was blessed with a really amazing judge, and she told me, she said, do you want this program? And I said, not really. And she was like, I'm going to send you back, and I'll bring you back next week. And when she brought me back next week, she said, you know what, Miss Flutterjohn, we are not going to let you go because we see something in you that you don't see in yourself. And that was the first moment someone gave me an opportunity, and someone really saw the value in me. And I held on to that little bit of faith that they had in me, and I blossomed from it. I never used again. I did go back into custody a few more times, but I stayed sober after that. And sometimes you just need someone to see your potential. I work with 45 people right now, but that is not the amount that I would recommend working with. We are kind of short-staffed on the only peer support here. And I was telling Sandy in the beginning, their peer support is starting to leave Ada County. And general caseload would be 25 people or so. I have 45 because I am trying to help out as many people I can before I leave here. I do work with men and women. Oh, sorry. I do work with men and women, and I prefer to work with women just because I have an easier understanding. Recovery for men is very different than it is for women. And the rule of thumb is women stick with women and men stick with men. That is how I was raised to be sober. That is my experience in staying sober. And so I try to just connect the men with other men in the recovery community. My fiance is also in recovery. And so I like to kind of push them to being with him or getting connected with some of the guy friends I have. But yeah, I definitely work with men and women. How do we connect people to peer support? Right now in Boise, there's a lot of areas that have peer support. I know that Moonlight Mountain has peer support, and Peer Wellness has, I think they have one more peer support. It is a very kind of vague thing it's starting to pick up, and then it's just trying to find people that can do the role and maintain it. But if someone is looking to get into peer support, you can look on Recovery Coach Academy and see if they have any resources. But other than that, a lot of treatment centers that I'm sure a lot of people are already involved with and attending, they have peer support there.
Caitlin, would you suggest the recovery centers around the state as a starting point?
I would absolutely. Yeah. I know there's one in Coeur d'Alene, and I know there's one in Ada County. I'm not sure where the other ones are. I know there's quite a few. I think there's one in Lewiston. But that's the best place to start. Community centers are huge, and they play a gigantic role in people getting sober and getting connected. And I mean, even if you went to Peer Wellness, I don't know if you all are in Ada County, but if you go to Peer Wellness and you are like, oh, I need peer support, someone there is going to help you find that.
How does the billing work?
Our billing is through Medicaid. It's through Medicaid, and it's through the state funding. And Medicaid picked it up. It actually I started working here about 3 years ago. I was interning here, and Optum picked up our bid, and Optum needed recovery coaching to be part of the new services that they were starting. And so I filled that position. And then we bill through Optum, and we bill through state funding. There are independent people that do like life coaching or peer services, and peer services and recovery coaching are essentially the same thing. The only difference is recovery coaching is recovering from substance use, and peer support is mental health. So a lot of them are kind of a dual role, but recovery coaches, you can only be in recovery as your shared lived experience. Peer support is mental health and whatever else. But yeah, there are people that do it independently, and you can file through your own insurance. I don't know of any in Idaho, but I know that they are around.
Caitlin, could you talk about the difference, and if you said this and I missed it, I apologize, but the difference between what you do and a person having a sponsor in a 12-step program?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm going to move over here because the sun is starting to just blind out my screen. That's a really big role, and that's always like the gray area is what I call it, because especially with mentors or sponsors, like what's the difference? And my role is not to help you work through the 12 steps. I don't take my people through the 12 steps. I refer them out of it. And so peer support essentially is like a mentor, but you're not supposed to use that term, but it's honestly the easiest way to explain it to people. I just want to be like a peer to help my people grow and be supportive and teach them how to do things that they may not know how to do, even if it's something simple like learning how to grocery shop or pay your taxes. It's tax season. Nobody likes taxes. People in early recovery especially hate taxes. So try and help them learn how to get connected and get those things done.
Have you had to work at all with any probation or parole officers in any kind of official capacity at the treatment court?
Yeah, we have 3 POs here. We have Audrey Rush, Tess Skidrow, and we have Matt Smith. And I work pretty closely with all of them. They're really big. I feel like POs are kind of given this like negative judgment. I feel like you guys are kind of like negatively involved and affiliated with people. And so we're blessed here to have 3 really amazing POs that genuinely care about people and want to see them success. And I think that that is one of the things that's really been growing in like life as a whole. Like a lot of law enforcement is starting to have a better understanding of substance use and a lot of things. But I work with them. I'll do court staffings with them. I'll go and meet with them. Sometimes I'll just bring my list of clients I have into their office if they're here and just go through all my people and answer any questions they have or ask any questions that I may have. And a lot of times it's a good opportunity. It's a learning opportunity for me. It's a learning opportunity for their probation. And it's a really good dual relationship to have. I love probation. That is my like end goal, is to work in probation. I think that you guys have a really important role. I've told Sandy before, like I had a probation officer when I was on juvenile probation, and she was the nicest and like most inspiring person I ever had in my life. And I feel like you guys play a really crucial role, and I see it a lot with the people I work with now, where I had a girl who got a year sober, and the first thing she wanted to do was call her probation officer from when she got arrested and tell them, thank you for getting her probation violation, and thank you for getting her into drug court. And like, what an amazing thing to be a part of, is helping that person and then reflecting back on someone that played a vital role in that person being able to live.
So Caitlin, is there anything specific that you see probation officers do that just isn't conducive for success for the client? You know, I don't know if you can think of anything, but something that you tend to see that maybe would be helpful feedback to hear as a probation officer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these things in the nicest way possible. One of the biggest thing is a lot of the times, and I get this as well because I've worked in treatment fields, a lot of the times it's like when someone is lying a lot or not doing well, like you lose that trust in that relationship, and it can be really hard to understand. And just trying to take a step back and see that person as being a person, and giving them more patience and understanding. I know all the times I get frustrated with people that I work with, and I'm like, why can't this person just pay their fucking cost of supervision? I did not mean to cuss. Or why can't they turn themselves in or stop using? And instead of being like, you need to do this, being like, what can I do to help you? How can I help you learn this? And then the second thing, which I heard many years ago and was one of the most like crucial points that I felt like was really big turning point, was for probation, was one of our POs was telling me about an individual that they were meeting with, and this person had kept relapsing and relapsing and relapsing. They'd been on probation for like 2 or 3 years. And then the PO met with him, and the PO was like, how have you been doing? The person was like, I got 30 days. And they're like, okay. And that person was like, 30 days is a long time. 24 hours is a long time. So like, appreciate the little steps that they're making. You know, if someone's sober for a day or 2 days, like that is massive. You know, like that, it's a lot of control. There's a lot more that goes into staying sober. When I got sober, I was at the shelter. I didn't have a job. I didn't have clothes. The only clothes I had were the ones that were in the Lawson town to Ada County when I got released. I didn't have family in the area. I was literally all alone, and I would walk around Boise for like 9 hours. I would sleep in the basement of like one of the buildings downtown because it was winter. And sometimes it's easy to be like, why didn't that person just go to a meeting or call a friend? And it's like, not everyone has that opportunity, you know, and just realizing that there's a bigger picture to why people may not be being successful. You know, like a lot of resources and things are a lot of people need resources that aren't always available. And instead of asking, because I never was like, oh, I need a phone or I need clothes, because I was like, that's not their problem. You know, like that's my problem. I need to take care of myself. I've been taking care of myself. No one else is going to take care of me. And just having that opportunity to be like, you know, you seem like you're kind of struggling. What can I do for you? How can we get you to a point where you're going to be successful? It's really helpful. So compassion is definitely the key.
Are there any other questions?
Dang, Caitlin's gonna get off early. She's gonna get off easy here with no question, with
I
no
know.
other questions.
I'm like, this is great.
Well, we definitely appreciate you, Caitlin, for sharing your story and telling us all about peer support. This has been really helpful for me and hopefully helpful for everyone online. And we appreciate everyone that attended today. We appreciate you guys taking time out of your day for these trainings. And so thank you, everyone. And I think we can adjourn if there's no more questions. Hopefully you're seeing some of these thank yous, Caitlin.
I am. Yeah. Thank you guys. And I really appreciate, I never in my life thought I would be able to present with a bunch of people on probation and parole. And I think that's a cool blessing on its own. So thank you for listening and taking the time out of your day to be here.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Try to stay
Thank
warm.
you. Great job, Caitlin. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Did you ladies need anything?